This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. Liz Truss served only 50 days as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Her premiership was the shortest in the history of Great Britain. What caused the collapse of her political career? The UK news media and politicians say she mismanaged the introduction of her economic plan, and it caused disorder in the markets. Perhaps. But today, True News will present to you a more sinister explanation of why Liz Truss was removed from number 10 Downing Street. Hillary Clinton should listen and learn something from this drama. However, first, Doc Burkhart and I have an update on the mysterious hammer assault against Paul Pelosi, the wealthy husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So, Doc, let's start with this report from ABC News 7. This is the San Francisco ABC affiliate, and the suspect was transferred to the San Francisco County Jail, where he was arraigned today. But there's a couple paragraphs in here that we want to point out because the narrative keeps changing. It's hard to keep your eyes on the peanut under the shell.
Right.
The shells are moving around, and the peanut's in there. And one day, this explanation is here, and then they move it over here, and Doc, the average person's attention span in a story like this is very short. It's when people like you and I that have to spend time following it, it gets confusing.
Right.
Because what they're saying today is different than what they said Friday and what they said Saturday and Sunday. Just little pieces of it keep changing.
Right.
So let's take a look at what ABC is reporting.
So this is from ABC 7 News in San Francisco. They're quoting here, Mr. DePepe specifically targeted the Pelosi home to confront Speaker Pelosi. This is according to District Attorney Brooke Jenkins. There was no security present. Let that sink in. There was no security present, and he was able to break the window to a glass door to gain entry into the home. Now, according to the criminal complaint released Monday, Paul Pelosi was asleep when DePepe entered his bedroom, allegedly telling him to wake up and that he was looking for Nancy. It was at some point after that Mr. Pelosi asked to go to the bathroom, which is where he was able to call 911 from his cell phone. So police arrived on the scene minutes after the 911 call to see the two men struggling for control over the hammer, according to the affidavit. Officers asked what was going on. DePepe responded by saying, "Everything is good." The ABC 7 News I-team confirmed Monday there is no memorandum of understanding or formal agreement between the San Francisco Police Department and U.S. Capitol Police for security measures. Speaker Pelosi has provided 24-hour protective detail from U.S. Capitol Police, but that protection does not necessarily extend to the family. Listen to this last sentence. Chief Scott told ABC 7 the department used to have a security detail at the Pelosi residence, but didn't specify when that ended.
Well, here we go again, Doc. New tidbits of information that have been dribbled out today. We go back to, there was no security present. DePape. We don't even know. See, they're even confusing us about the name. It's DePepe. What else have we heard? I think we've heard 3 versions of his name. Different officials say it differently. So you're saying DePepe.
And that's based on what Chief Scott was saying back on Friday.
But the county prosecutor or city prosecutor says DePape.
Brooke Jenkins said DePape.
Okay.
And that seems to be filtering out into all the various media outlets now.
So Brooke Jenkins, the district attorney, said there was no security present. So I'm assuming that means armed security guards. There was no security present. Well, what about a security alarm system? What about the security cameras? Because I've seen photographs of the Pelosi home, and the cameras are there.
Right.
Were the cameras operating, or was it like the night they murdered Princess Diana and the security cameras mysteriously stopped operating inside the tunnel.
Right.
Were the Pelosi security cameras operating that night? Nobody has said a word. There should be plenty of evidence, videos showing David DePape going in, beating the glass door to get inside. You have to wonder why there was no security present at the Speaker's house.
And what gets me is the chief said that at one time there was an agreement between San Francisco police and U.S. Capitol Police to provide security, but that it ended sometime in the past. Okay, so why? When? I mean, why is no one even asking those questions about that aspect of things? Mm-hmm. If I didn't know better, I'd say they didn't want security present for some reason.
Yeah, for our guys in the control room, I want to jump down to element number 7B, because I think this is the right time to bring this up into the discussion. This is an an AP, Associated Press report from earlier this year, I want to say around June. There we go. And what was it, June 7?
Yes.
U.S. sees heightened extremist threat heading into the midterm elections.
Right.
This is Department of Homeland Security issued a threat alert. DHS says there may be violence the closer we get to the election.
Yes.
So, my question is, did anybody go over to the Pelosi house and say, Paul, lock the doors every night, turn the security alarm on, make sure the cameras are working, don't go outside at night. It's spooky right now. We have an election, and there's a heightened sense of that there may be attacks on high-level politicians in the country. Be extremely cautious this year.
And did Speaker Pelosi see this alert? I mean, was she aware of this alert? And did it ever cross her mind to say, well, the Department of Homeland Security said there was going to be, threats of violence, as we get to the midterms. Maybe I should have something for Paul back home.
Obviously.
Did that ever cross the Speaker's mind or the mind of Paul Pelosi Jr. or anybody in the family saying, how's Dad doing back in San Francisco?
Doc, I know as a husband how I, make sure that there's security at my home. I mean, there are people who hate me. Can you imagine that? There are people who hate me.
You, huggable you, lovable you.
There are people, Doc, this is true. There are people who hate me. And people that have never even met me hate me, all right? But I have to think about it. And so I have to make sure we have security at her home.
Right.
Now, I'm not at the level of House Speaker Pelosi. Certainly, every high-level politician should have round-the-clock protection, including their homes and their family members.
I mean, a simple security alarm system, if nothing else.
That's what I mean. So I find it hard to believe that the Speaker of the House was not briefed by Homeland Security officials and told, Speaker Pelosi, this is going to be a very dangerous year. We have reason to believe that extremists, conspiracy theorists, COVID deniers, election deniers.
Data deniers.
Yeah, data deniers. They're all climate deniers. They're all going to come together this year before the election and target political figures in this country. Make sure your home is secure. Be very, very careful. Come on. You tell me that Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi, he's a very wealthy man.
Yes.
He's not dumb. He's a very wealthy man. He obviously hears a lot from his wife because he makes awesome investments.
Yes.
So he's listening in to a lot of confidential discussions because he knows where to invest money and make millions of dollars.
But just set her speakership aside,
right?
Just his wealth alone
would be enough.
I think he could afford a security system.
Of course he could. And people at that level are very concerned about their personal safety.
Except Paul Pelosi.
People
that
who
night.
are multimillionaires like the Pelosi's are very aware of the threat to them, even if they're not political. Doc, I know wealthy people who aren't political, and they are very concerned about their security because they know that people know that they have money and they have the best security that they can have. Again, are you telling me when Nancy left to go on her political campaigning for the Democrats, she didn't say, Paul, you're going to be here by yourself. There won't be a third person in the house with you. You're going to be here all by yourself. Lock the doors. Turn on the security alarm. Make sure the cameras are operating.
Have your cell phone nearby.
Have your cell phone. You might even want to have a hammer by the bed. All right? Be prepared for, we're only a week away from the election. Something crazy could happen. A January 6er insurrectionist could try to get in here. You know, they were looking for me. They were going through the halls of Congress saying, where's Nancy? They might come here, Paul, and shout, where's Nancy? They had these conversations.
You would think they did.
You would think. But apparently they didn't. Now, one thing came out in that ABC 7 report. The police officers asked DePape, what's going on here?
And he replied.
This is the first time we've heard this, Doc.
Yes.
And he replied,
everything is good.
Everything is good. Well, what does that mean? The police have entered the Pelosi home and they go, what's going on? What's happening here? And the attacker says, okay, everything's good. Everything's good. Then he grabs the hammer and clobbers Pelosi in front of the police officers. Now, this story's going to get more convoluted as we go.
Right.
We'll drop down here. This is, I wanted to play a soundbite from an NBC Meet the Press program on Sunday.
Right.
Just about a minute. And mind you, this is NBC.
Right. And this is on Meet the Press. They have Tom Winter, who's out in San Francisco, and he was doing one of the first reports on the whole Pelosi thing. And he's on Meet the Depressed Sunday morning. And he says there was a third person in the home.
Well, it has to be accurate because it was reported by NBC.
Right.
Let's watch it.
You know, there have been a lot of the reports have indicated sort of how police got there and they witnessed the beating at the time. And there seems to be a hint that there was a third person in the house. You've got some new details on that as well, Tom. What can you tell us?
Well, that's correct, Chuck. So the police chief came out and did a press conference later on Friday when most people had already started to go to bed on the East Coast. And in that press conference, he stated that there was a third person inside the house that opened the door for police when they were called to that house. And that's when they saw the struggle over the hammer between DePepe and Pelosi. And then DePepe, according to police, struck Pelosi in the head with that hammer.
So NBC reported there was a third person in the house.
Right.
On Friday, the police chief, Bill Scott, said a person opened the door
Yes.
and allowed the officers to come in. Then that story changed. But the police themselves have never said it. What I've noticed today, Doc, is that the police and the prosecutor's office are very careful
About the words they use.
in the phraseology that they use when they talk about how the officers entered. Obviously, they've been told you can't say a third person opened the door. But they also can't say the police officers opened the door, because that would be lying. What I've noticed that they say now is that when the door was opened, the officers entered the house. I've seen this multiple times.
Right.
When the door was open, the officers entered the house. Different people would interpret that statement different ways. You might say, well, when the police officers opened the door, they went in. But I might say, no, that's not what they said. They said when somebody else opened the door, they went in.
Right.
They're being very careful. They're not disclosing the truth, but they're not lying.
Right.
They're walking a thin line so that they cannot be accused of lying, but they also can't be accused of telling the truth.
And when I was listening to the Brooke Jenkins statement yesterday evening on the way home, she said, there's information that we are not going to tell you that occurred. She said that.
Why?
So
Why? National security secret? Did DePape know something about hypersonic missiles? I mean, why? Why would they conceal information? It should all come out. Next one, this is a Business Insider. Here's another piece of new information. Pelosi tried to escape from the attacker by going to an elevator in the house that was equipped with a phone. Let's read this one.
Okay. So according to San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins, DePape entered the home by breaking the rear glass door and went upstairs to the second floor to find Pelosi sleeping in his bed. So the bedroom's up on the second floor, Rick. He woke him up, confronting him about the whereabouts of Speaker Pelosi, Jenkins said, adding that Pelosi was wearing a pajama shirt and boxer shorts. At some point, Pelosi tried to access the elevator inside the home that had a telephone in order to call authorities, the district attorney said, but was blocked by DePape. Pelosi was able to call the police later on after he asked to go to the bathroom. When DePape realized that Pelosi called the authorities, he took him downstairs near the front entrance of the home.
A lot of new information.
Yes.
We learned about an elevator.
They had a phone.
Okay, so...
Was the phone not working?
Well, it says DePape blocked him.
Okay.
So try to picture this scene. Paul Pelosi makes a beeline to the elevator in the House, knows that there's a phone in there. The intruder blocks him, but then Pelosi says, I got to go to the bathroom.
And the intruder says,
okay.
Sure.
All right.
This is my first home invasion.
Yeah, I've never done this before. Go ahead, go to the bathroom. You can't. So he goes to the bathroom. Pelosi doesn't lock the door of the bathroom.
And obviously speaks loud enough for the intruder, David DePape, to hear the call that's going on, the 911 call.
Although it was in code. We were told the phone call was done in code. But he heard the code talk.
And so the home invader, the intruder, hearing the 911 call, does not run away, does not escape the authorities, does not, try to, get lost, but actually takes Paul Pelosi downstairs.
Escorted him
downstairs.
But Paul Pelosi opened the bathroom door.
Now think about that. Now, Rick brought this up today, and I hadn't thought about it in this whole discussion. Do you have a lock on your bathroom door?
Most people do.
I would say 99% of the homes in America have a lock on the bathroom door.
And the Pelosi's probably could afford a door lock.
Right. So did it not occur to Paul Pelosi to lock the bathroom door?
I mean, you got a guy out there with a hammer, and you got inside a bathroom.
And you were in there long enough to make a telephone call.
So wouldn't you say to the police, there's a man in my house with a hammer. I've locked myself into the bathroom. Please hurry, get here quickly. He's got a hammer.
I'm up on the second floor off the master bedroom. I'm locked in there.
He's going to beat on the door with the hammer. I don't know how long I can hold him off. I mean, if I were in that situation and the bathroom is the only place I could get to for safety, I'm going to go in there and lock the door. And then I'm going to hopefully hold him off from breaking down the door long enough till the police arrive. But Pelosi opened the door and then said, let's walk downstairs. Okay. Why does this sound stupid?
Because it is stupid. All right, so Daily Mail. Paul Pelosi has spoken to investigators from his ICU bed as he recovers from this hammer attack. The story started coming out yesterday. This guy is an illegal immigrant from Canada, has been in the U.S. For years.
Well then, okay, an illegal immigrant living in a sanctuary city committing crime. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with it?
It's normal in California.
Well, what's the big deal about it? They should leave the guy alone.
Yeah, they shouldn't even bring that up in conversation.
They should embrace it. They should embrace it. It's an illegal immigrant. He's oppressed.
So, in the Daily Mail is reporting that on this press conference that Burke Jenkins had, in the press conference on Monday, San Francisco District Attorney Burke Jenkins explicitly referred to the attack as politically motivated. That's the line they're putting out there. She also said she believes that DePape intended to murder Paul Pelosi. He certainly had opportunity to do so, didn't he, Rick? So,
no, he was there to break Nancy's kneecaps.
Right. So Jenkins said in the press conference that Paul Pelosi was asleep in a loose-fitting pajama shirt and a pair of boxer shorts when he was awoken by DePape around 2:30. Now, at some point during the ordeal, Paul Pelosi attempted to escape into an elevator to call 911. And when that avenue was closed off to him, he did manage to get to a bathroom where he was able to call the police. DePape was listening in on the phone call and knew police were going to arrive, according to FBI interrogators, but explained that he did not leave after Pelosi's call to 911 because, much like the American founding fathers with the British, he was fighting against tyranny without the option of surrender. Okay, so now we've got a political statement in this.
Wait a minute. He's a Canadian.
Yes.
He's with the crown. He's with the crown.
Yes, I was going to say.
He's not
what does he care?
Yeah. That is one of the phoniest lines I've heard in this whole story. They quoted the founding fathers. Oh, we got to get to founding fathers. We got anti-vaxxers.
This is January 6th stuff here.
We got the founding fathers in here now.
Now, if that's not enough, according to the criminal complaint, the day after the attack, authorities traced DePape to a home along Shasta Road in Richmond, California, about 18 miles north of San Francisco. Now, this home belongs to renowned Bay Area photographer Malcolm Lubliner, who served as DePape's landlord. Now, DePape lived at the address for 2 years. Now, listen to this. Investigators said that inside the home they found additional hammers, a sword, and pairs of gloves. Now, remember, DePape brought 2 hammers with him to the scene, supposedly, and they go to this place and they find a whole bunch of hammers. Mm-hmm. It is a garage, as you pointed out, right. But maybe the guy collects hammers. Maybe he uses hammers in ways the hammers shouldn't be used.
You mean like the handle?
Right. So now, Lubliner has been a fixture in the California art scene since the 60s and has had his work displayed at the San Francisco Museum of Art, the LA County Museum of Arts, as well as the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. He has photographed American icons such as Jasper Johns and Janis Joplin. Rick, you came across a website for the Kroll Gallery today that features some of his work.
I tried to find information about him. So this was a website, Craig Kroll Gallery. That's the picture on the right, Malcolm Lubliner. That's, from back in the, 60s, 70s, something like that. But this is, Lubliner is the landlord of DePape. Now, I'm not going to read all this stuff that goes with this, other than I will just say that Mr. Lubliner appears that he's a photographer.
Right.
Okay?
A long-time resident of the San Francisco Bay Area.
He has a long history of photographing homosexual events. That's the only way I'll say it. But in San Francisco, if you just go outside with the camera, I guess you could do that.
Right.
All right.
Just walk out in the neighborhood.
But he is associated with various homosexual events. And, for example, cruising the archive 4 decades of queer art and culture in Los Angeles. That's part of this, that still that we just showed you. Right. I'm reading from that web page. One thing that I saw, and I can't show you the photograph because it had a copyright mark on it, and we can't do it, or we don't have the right to show it. But it was a photograph of Mr. Lubliner carrying boxes of DePape's private belongings out of his house. Now, Lubliner is the owner of the house.
Or the garage where DePape was living.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's a garage that's been converted into
Right.
an apartment, okay? So DePape has lived there for 2 years. Whether he pays rent, we don't know. But he's lived there for 2 years, and Lubliner is his landlord. The picture I saw was Mr. Lubliner carrying a box of DePape's private possessions out of the house, putting them in a vehicle. The caption on the article of the photograph said, landlord Lubliner removes DePape's personal belongings from the house.
Now, wait a minute here. So, over the weekend, I know that both the FBI and the San Francisco Police Department were in DePape's garage.
So Lubliner interfered in the investigation of a crime, and I would say participated in the obstruction of justice by removing items from a house, that was lived in by a man who just attacked the husband of the Speaker of the House. Why would Mr. Lubliner remove those items? Why would the FBI allow him in there?
That's right. That's my question.
How did he get in? I mean, you say, well, he owns the house. You telling me that the FBI didn't put crime scene tape around the house and put a sign on the door, do not enter, FBI? But he was just walking in and out, removing stuff.
Right.
What did he remove? Pictures, photographs, what?
You know, in the DOJ statement that they issued yesterday, they said DePape in his garage house, whatever it is, had hammers, had twine, had rope, had both rubber gloves and had cloth gloves. I mean, all these detailed things that they said that he had. He had those things in his backpack, supposedly, when he went to the Pelosi's, too.
Right.
But he had even more back at the garage house.
Right.
So
now, Doc, we had said earlier, and I got to correct it because we said about how did he scale the wall. I saw a photograph of the Pelosi home today, and there's no wall because you saw the street and the garage door, and then you could see the walkway and then the glass patio doors. So there was no, to my knowledge, there was no security wall around the Pelosi home. But in that photograph, you saw multiple security cameras.
yes.
So where is the video? Which company is the security company?
That operates the cameras. That's a fair question.
Look, I have our security cameras on my phone. That's very common.
Yes.
Did Nancy Pelosi, did she have access to the cameras, live footage? Was she looking at Paul? Did she make the 911 call? The wellness check.
Right.
It wasn't a 911 distress call. It was a wellness check. Go over and check on somebody. So which company is managing the security cameras?
That's a fair question.
Which means that there has to be a live operator somewhere that's watching the Pelosi home, because this is the Speaker's house. Look, if you come here to our church, when the security cameras are on outside, you are spotted immediately, and there is a human at the security company watching you, and a speaker system that says, you are trespassing on private property, please leave immediately or we will call the police.
Right.
Right? You telling me at Nancy Pelosi's house, they don't have a better system than what we have at this church?
The Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House. How many times, Doc, have you and I gotten out of bed
1 or 2 in the morning.
at 2 o'clock in the morning because you call me or I call you, and and you say, hey, Rick, look at your phone, look at the cameras, okay? And we see somebody walking around the church, okay? So we notify the police right away.
Right.
And you and I drive over here to meet the police. That's why you have a security camera system.
Yes.
And they chase off, they're very good at chasing people off.
And Rick, why do we have a security camera system? Why?
Because
what's the purpose?
Because leftists make threats to kill me.
Yes.
And I have to take them seriously. That's why. And so Nancy Pelosi, and nobody in politics should be hurt. Nobody. Nobody in their home. Look, that home is their castle. Boy, there's a phrase that hasn't been used for decades. Your home is your castle. That used to mean stay off my property.
Right.
But the Pelosi should feel secure in their home. They should absolutely feel secure in their home. Paul Pelosi shouldn't have to worry about somebody in his bedroom in his underwear with a hammer, unless he invited him in.
Then that's his problem.
That's his problem. That's right. But this story doesn't make sense. And every time somebody opens up their mouth, there are more gaps in the narrative.
Yes.
But again, I don't expect anybody to investigate it, and I don't expect the San Francisco police to tell the truth. They'll say as little as possible, and DePape will be put away in a federal prison. This poor illegal immigrant who took refuge in a sanctuary city governed by Democrats, where criminals are allowed to roam free in the great state of California. But these Democrats are going to lock him up. Not right, is it, Doc?
No, it's not.
Not right. So, not if you believe the Democrats. Those criminals deserve to be free, just like they're doing it in New York State, in Illinois,
Chicago, Atlanta. So,
okay, we're going to turn our attention now. This next story involves Great Britain, and oh man, this one's interesting. Follow the story. So we're going to start with this report from New Delhi TV. Russia accuses UK of involvement in naval drone strike in Crimea.
All right, so there was this massive drone strike that occurred
a couple days ago.
So Russia's accused Britain of involvement in an attempted drone strike in Crimea. So Russia's defense ministry alleged the specialists from the UK helped with training and supervision for the failed attack by Ukraine. They said the Kyiv regime carried out a terrorist attack against the ships of the Black Sea Fleet and civilian ships that were on the outer and inner roads of the Sebastopol Vase. The attack involved 9 unmanned aerial vehicles and 7 autonomous maritime drones, Russia's defense ministry said in a statement.
Here's the key line. Watch this one. Okay.
The preparation of this terrorist act and the training of military personnel of 73rd Marine Special Operations Center were carried out under supervision of British specialists, it said.
All right, so this happened, 29th, was that Sunday?
That would have been Saturday.
Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, Saturday. So major attack on the Russian Black Sea Fleet by drones. And the Russians blaming Great Britain for organizing the drone attack, okay?
Right, supervising, coordinating, and doing everything with it.
Okay, so this next story got hardly any coverage.
Yes.
Russia blames UK Navy for terror attack on Nord Stream pipelines.
Yes, and in the story it says that the same people that coordinated the drone attack coordinated this attack.
There you go.
So Russia has accused the UK of Nord Stream explosions in September this year, claiming the specialists from the British Royal Navy helped the Ukrainian military blow up the Nord Stream gas pipelines. Now, according to available information, representatives of this unit of the British Navy took part in the planning, provision, and implementation of a terrorist attack in the Baltic Sea on September 26 this year, blowing up the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines. That was a statement issued by the Ministry of Defense back on Saturday. Now, Russia's accusations were part of its official statement relating to a massive drone attack carried out by Ukraine on the Black Sea Fleet in the Crimean port city of Sevastopol, damaging 2 Russian warships. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, 16 drones were involved in that attack, and we've already relayed some of the details of that. So in the statement regarding the drone attack, Russia goes on to say, and we believe the UK was also involved in the Nord Stream pipeline attack.
I think they go beyond saying we believe.
So the Russian ministry said that the British specialists from the same unit involved in Nord Stream gas explosions also directed the Ukrainian drone attacks on the ships of the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Crimea. The preparation of this terrorist attack and the training of military personnel of the Ukrainian 73rd Special Center for Maritime Operations were carried out under the guidance of British specialists located in the city of Mykolaiv region of Ukraine, the Russian Defense Ministry said. Not only do they name them, they tell them where they're at.
Okay, so, Doc, if the Russians are correct and Britain, the British Navy, carried out the bombing, the explosion on the Nord Stream pipelines, if they're correct, then this is a major act of war.
That's right.
And Russia has every right to declare war on Great Britain. I mean, this would be, this is on par with, an attack on Pearl Harbor, the sinking of the Lusitania. I mean, just think of previous world wars. What's something like this?
Well, they've gone to war for less.
They've gone to war for less. So this bolsters the view that King Charles is leading World War III, and that we better pay close attention to King Charles. Because remember, right after the pipeline explosion, Vladimir Putin said it was done by the Anglo-Saxons.
Right.
And we pointed out here on TruNews, he's talking about Great Britain. He named Anglo-Saxons. Anglo-Saxons are the tribes from Germany that migrated to the British Isles in the Middle Ages and settled on the islands, and that became the British Empire later. So where is this going?
Well, something very interesting.
Now we're going to make a major turn. Daily Mail, Liz Truss's phone thought to be spied on by Moscow while Foreign Secretary. Now this story came out, was that Sunday, right?
Yes.
October 30th. And on Sunday when I read this, Doc, I didn't connect it to the Nord Stream explosions. It's today that I see the connection.
Right.
So this was a really big story Sunday in Great Britain.
Right. So if we put the still back up on the screen for control. So this has caused some concern. So let's set this up. Ministers are warning now, don't use your personal phones for government business.
Like Hillary Clinton.
Okay. Because they're suspecting that the Kremlin hacked Liz Truss. All right, that's where the Daily Mail story is going here. It says, spy chiefs have ordered ministers to stop using their personal phones to conduct government business following a suspected Kremlin hack on Liz Truss's mobile phone. A Whitehall source said all ministers involved in national security would be expected to attend fresh training with the security services this week to ensure everyone is aware how this material should be handled. Ministers will be warned that they should never use their personal mobile phones to conduct government business, as they are likely to be the target of hostile states such as Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Any comments on that, Rick?
Common sense?
Yes. I mean, even here.
You're in the cabinet of a major power. You have to be reminded, don't use your personal phone to do government business. You're talking about national security secrets. See, this is what Hillary Clinton was doing.
Right.
There's a lot of them were using their personal phones and personal emails. It's hard to believe that these people do it unless
they do it on purpose.
They do it on purpose.
So, story goes on, Daily Mail. Paul Neville-Jones, former chairman of Britain's Joint Intelligence Committee.
Pauline
Neville-Jones, yesterday said she was not at all tolerant of the notion that it's okay for ministers to use private mobile phones. Well, of course not. The warnings follow astonishing revelation in yesterday's Mail on Sunday that Ms. Truss's personal mobile was spied on by hackers thought to be working for Moscow while she was foreign secretary. So this started back before the recent prime minister election where she moved into office. Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, said senior government ministers were obvious targets for the security services of hostile powers. He told BBC Radio 4's The World this weekend that the likelihood was that Ms. Truss's phone had been targeted by Russia, which he said had significant capabilities for hacking. Professor Alan Woodward, cybersecurity specialist at the University of Surrey, said Ms. Truss's phone was most likely infected with spyware, which would have posted details of all her messages back to the hackers. Baroness Neville-Jones, the former security minister, told Times Radio it was extremely unhealthy for ministers to be conducting official business through private channels, particularly when using personal phones that are vulnerable to hacking. It's common sense to know that your mobile is potentially vulnerable, and it is a rule that you don't use it, she said. This is what got Hillary Clinton in trouble.
Doc, Miss Neville-Jones, saw a photograph of her. She looks like she could play M in a James Bond movie. So she's being very accurate here. This is what got Hillary Clinton in trouble. So I think she's stunned. She's stunned to find out that the foreign secretary, and then later became the prime minister, was using her personal private phone to conduct state business.
While foreign secretary.
As foreign secretary. And who do you call when you're a foreign secretary?
Other foreign secretaries.
Yes, and heads of state.
Right.
So,
and wouldn't you think that you would have super secure phones at that level for that, you wouldn't go down to the, Apple store and pick up an iPhone.
They give it to them. They give it to them.
Right.
They don't use it. It's either stupidity, laziness, or deliberate.
Right.
Okay. So I don't know which one it is. Look, Hillary Clinton didn't want her personal. She did not want a government phone and a government email address because it left a record.
Yes.
That's why. She wanted to do business her way. And she got away with it. And she didn't go to prison for it, even though Donald Trump is probably going to be arrested in 2 or 3 weeks.
But you got to be thinking that after that incident, all these players and the Five Eyes and everything said, we can't let that happen again. Right?
You would think so.
You would think so. So let's look further down the rabbit hole here. This is Daily Mail. Russia claims Britain coordinated Nord Stream explosions, and Liz Truss sent U.S. a message saying it's done shortly after the blast. Okay, so Russia has accused Britain of coordinating attacks on the Nord Stream gas pipelines. This comes after Kim.com, who ran site Mega Upload before he was convicted of fraud, began circulating a conspiracy theory that Liz Truss had texted U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken immediately after the attack saying it's done. Kim claimed to have learned of the message from Truss's iCloud after it was revealed that Russia hacked her phone while she was foreign secretary. Neither Kim nor Peskov have released the evidence they claim to have seen.
And this is Peskov, the press secretary to Putin.
For President Putin, yes. Mm-hmm. So Kim's claim about Truss's iPhone was also picked up and parroted by Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for Russia's foreign ministry, who demanded answers. Frankly, I don't care who got this information or how, she said. I am interested in London's response to the following question. Did British Prime Minister Liz Truss send a message to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken in the immediate aftermath of the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline saying it's done? That's the question Maria Zakharova is asking of her counterparts in the UK. Mm-hmm. So Russia's claims appear inconsistent with what is known about Truss's phone hack, which was first reported by the Mail on Sunday. So they're not denying it was hacked, but the phone was hacked. According to the paper, the hack was discovered over the summer while Truss was still Foreign Secretary and in the running to replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. The pipe blast did not occur until September 26, more than 2 weeks after the contest concluded, with Truss declared the victor. Now, while the public did not learn about the hack until recently, the Mail on Sunday reports those in government did know about it and decided to hush it up. It therefore seems highly unlikely that Truss would have been allowed to keep using the phone until the time of the blast, especially to send sensitive messages to America's top diplomat. Now, sources told the Mail on Sunday that the device is now being kept inside a locked safe at a secure government location, and the UK government has not responded to the claims.
Okay, Doc, we now know why Liz Truss was removed from number 10 Downing Street on the 50th day of her premiership.
And it
had nothing to do with her tax plan.
Right. It had everything to do with she was a security liability.
And the Russians knew they had the evidence about the pipeline explosion. More than anything, Doc. British intelligence knew the Russians have the information. And the U.S. knows about it too. Anthony Blinken, they've known about this for months. They came up with this story. Putin blew up his own pipeline.
So ridiculous.
It's just ridiculous as the Pelosi hammer story. But they're professional liars. They lie about everything.
If you keep repeating a lie long enough, it becomes truth in some people's minds.
And just change the facts every day and get the people confused.
Right.
But in this case, if this is true, and as you said, the British government is not denying that the phone was hacked.
Yes, in fact, they're admitting it was hacked. They're saying it was hacked.
Yes. And they've locked it up in a vault.
In a secret location. All right.
So the question is, did she call U.S. Secretary of State Blinken and say, hey, it's done. You could be real happy. It's done. We blew it up. That's the question. And
they can deny it. Why not deny it? Why not just come out and deny it? Now, Kim.com, for those that don't know who he is, he's been living in New Zealand here for, I guess now, about a decade? Longer than that, maybe. He was the founder of Mega Upload. He was, was downloading, had the big business of downloading files where anyone could upload a file and download a file. And so, but he's been basically on the run for fraud and everything in multiple jurisdictions. But he does know his stuff when it comes to the internet and to phones. And so start off with this first Twitter thread here. How do the Russians, and this is from Kim.com, how do the Russians know that the UK blew up the Nord Stream pipelines in partnership with the US? Because Liz Truss used her iPhone to send a message to Secretary Blinken saying it's done a minute after the pipeline blew up and before anyone else knew. iCloud admin access rocks. Now, what does that mean? That means he was able, according to Kim.com, he was able to access Liz Truss's iCloud account and be able to view that. He goes on in this thread to say it wasn't the phone that was hacked. And he gives context here relating to this entire investigation.
What does he mean by it? It wasn't the phone that was hacked?
No, he's saying the entire administration was hacked. He's saying their entire security system was hacked.
Ooh.
That's the level. It's not just a hack of a phone. From there, everything was available. So the Russians, he's making the accusation basically that the Russians, have everything. They were able to get into the security systems of the UK government.
That explains why Putin and his people around him remain fairly calm.
Right.
through this war because
They got the goods.
they've got the information.
Yes.
They got the evidence.
Third pick in this thread here, it's not just the Five Eyes that have backdoor admin access to all big tech databases. Russia and China have sophisticated cyber units too. The funny thing is, government officials with top security clearance still prefer using iPhones over their NSA and GCHQ issued encrypted phones. And so, you know, they have access to secure phones. They just don't use them. They use their iPhones. All right, now, we have another thread from Kim.com where he explains how all this works. So if you walk through this here, so he explains how these secrets get out. So government secrets are only secret to ordinary people, not to nations engaged in global cyber war. Listen to this. This is what he's saying. The leaders of the top 20 spy nations know who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Let me explain the reality of the hyper-transparent spy world we're living in today. Top secret means nothing to the top spy agencies in the world. Secrecy exists to keep citizens in the dark. Russia and China know exactly who blew up the Nord Stream pipelines because in today's world, it's impossible for an operation like that to leave no trace. So he explains. All big tech databases are backboned by every major spy agency. Every smartphone is an open mic to them. Every computer that is connected to the net is wide open. That's why he was making that, you know, saying that everything was available to the Russians. All major chips and most hardware is Trojanized. All the data that one spy agency collects is stolen by the others. So it's going back and forth, Rick. All leaders of nations are targeted by spy tech, and not one of them, not even the U.S. president, isn't spied on successfully 24/7 by multiple foreign and domestic agencies. Even the encrypted devices that spy agencies give to their leaders are backdoored. That's the reality of the situation. Occasional private conversations in zero-tech environments are possible, but the rare exception. Something like Nord Stream attack involves hundreds of people from military, agencies, and the leadership of multiple countries. It's impossible not to have a weak link in such a scenario. The perpetrators of major events understand that their adversaries know exactly who did it, and it's a game they play against each other at the expense of ordinary people who become victims of stupid bragging contest. It's a secret war that's been going on for decades. Now, he says, I used to be a hacker. I turned data security consultant, hired the top hackers in the world, was paid by Fortune 500 companies to hack them. We never had any client we didn't hack successfully, and that's the truth. There's no effective data security at all. Everything is wide open. Spy agencies with billion-dollar budgets have coders in all leading tech companies implementing backdoors. It's impossible to keep them secret. Competing agencies, cyber criminals, and security analysts find them. That's why you constantly have to install new security patches. And I understand exactly how all this works. When the NSA cooperated with their New Zealand partner to spy on my devices in the copyright case, I caught them, I exposed them, took them to court, forced a change of the law, and the Prime Minister had to apologize to me because of it. When I'm sharing spy stuff with you, I'm not wasting your time like the 50 American spy chiefs who got their prostitutes to tell you lies about the Hunter Biden laptop being Russian disinformation, or that Russia hacked the DNC and gave the Hillary Clinton data to WikiLeaks. So basically he's saying, you know, I was able to get into Liz Truss's iCloud account. I saw it, and now I've put it out there. But he's saying that the Russians not only got into her account, her phone, they were able to get into the computer systems of the UK government.
Wow. It's just, it's astounding that Kim.com hacked Liz Truss's iCloud account, and in her iCloud account is texts and conversations about blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Right.
That she was that careless.
And
or are they careless or are they arrogant? Are they so arrogant that they don't think anybody would ever catch them?
Well, that's part of it too. But you know, but what Kim.com is saying, if I can do this,
yes,
if I can do this, someone, you know, that hasn't really been in the industry now for a decade. If I can do this, what can the Russians do? What can the Chinese do? They know everything already. They know it all.
Well, here's a question I have. Why didn't British intelligence know how sloppy she was?
Well, maybe they do know, and that's why she's not prime minister anymore.
But it went on for a long time.
Well, at least several months, we know, yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's like stuff that goes on here. You can tell me the NSA doesn't know about Hunter Biden?
They know everything.
The NSA has every phone call, every text message, every email Hunter Biden ever sent. All of it. They have it all. Of course they know what he was doing. And they knew about Hillary Clinton. And they know about all these politicians that are dishonest and crooked and sloppy and irresponsible. The intelligence agencies, I don't know why they don't speak up.
Well, and I think Kim.com explains some of it. Each spy agency for each different country, they have their own territory, their own bragging rights, if you will. And they use their information against one another.
Yes, yes.
So it's not really governments that are at each other's net throats.
The world is run by spy agencies.
Right.
Maria Zakharova, the press secretary of the Russian Foreign Ministry, she works for Sergei Lavrov. She is demanding answers from Liz Truss. This is her Telegram postings today.
Right, and so we quoted this question: did British Prime Minister Liz Truss send a message to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken immediately after the Nord Stream gas pipeline was blown up with the words, "It's done"? Now, she already knows the answer to that question, Rick. Mm-hmm. She knows, yes, that's exactly what happened. Now, the Brits have to either come out and flat out deny it, and they can't come out and admit it, because that would mean that everybody has access to Liz Truss's phone and basically all the security protocols of the UK government.
That's right. I mean, it was reported several years ago that China was in possession of everything on Hunter Biden's laptop. But they don't want to talk about that.
Right.
Of course they were they were using the Bidens. Of course they have everything. Doc, the Russians obviously, the British government obviously is denying this.
Right.
My question is, who leaked this to the British press? How did this come out about the hacking and Liz Truss's phone?
Well, maybe they leaked it on purpose because they knew that the story was coming out.
But how was it coming out?
Well, because, people like Kim.com and others, they were getting into her iCloud account.
Right.
They knew this was going to be out.
So the story that came out earlier last week about Liz Truss's phone, that was the first inoculation.
Right.
Like, we got to get ready. We're going to have to tell people the truth. Or the Russians released it.
And that's a possibility, too.
A little, political, psychological warfare against the Brits.
Now, of course, the UK Ministry of Defense is responding to this as number 47 for control. And this is standard dribble that they would put out to detract from their disastrous handling of the illegal invasion of Ukraine. The Russian Ministry of Defense is resorting to peddling false claims of an epic scale. This invented story says more about arguments going on inside the Russian government than it does about the West.
Well, the Telegraph reported today that Russia is considering further steps against Britain over the Nord Stream terror attack.
Right. So Russia is considering what further steps to take against Britain after alleging that the UK was responsible for an attack on the Nord Stream undersea gas pipelines. Our intelligence services have data indicating that British military specialists were directing and coordinating the attack. That came from Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. He said this earlier today. There's evidence that Britain is involved in sabotage. Remember, this is Vladimir Putin's spokesperson. There's evidence that Britain is involved in sabotage, in a terrorist attack on vital energy infrastructure, not just Russian, but international. Mr. Peskov did not provide any details, but insisted that the West should carefully analyze Moscow's information.
So Peskov said the Brits have been involved in attacks on vital energy infrastructure, not just Russian, but international. So he's implying other pipelines, refineries, so forth, infrastructure have been damaged, have been attacked.
That's the impression I got from the statement, unless he's referring to the Nord Stream pipelines as being international infrastructure, just them alone. But the implication I got from a statement was that this was not an isolated incident. Mm-hmm. They've been doing this a lot. Mm-hmm. Now, and we've basically got the goods on the Brits.
So the Russians could take various steps. They could declare war. Putin could go to the Russian Duma and say, we have the evidence. Britain blew up our pipeline. I want a declaration of war. We're going to attack Great Britain. That's one step. I don't think that's what he'll do.
But another step would be to use this information and this situation to Russia's advantage, mm-hmm. and to be able to put an end to the Ukraine conflict and say, listen, we've got it all. We know that you were involved in the Nord Stream pipeline. We know that you were involved in the drone attacks. We've got the goods on you on that. Now, we can take the next step and we can bring the war closer home, or let's sit down at the table and let's talk about how we settle everything here in Ukraine.
What is the next step? If they filed a complaint at the United Nations, they have to present evidence that is hacked. So in a court, that wouldn't hold up. Oh, you stole the information. Right. So this can't be used as evidence, okay? Or are they just going to come out and say, yes, we do have it. We did hack. Here it is. Here's the evidence. What do you say, United States? What do you say, Great Britain? Did you not blow up the pipeline? I mean, if Secretary Blinken has to answer questions, if the demand of the world is so great, did you or did you not have this conversation with Liz Truss about the pipeline? Now the United States is implicated in it. Then yes. How many other NATO nations had knowledge of the plan?
Well, Kim.com says
all of them.
20 of them.
Mm-hmm. So this is the stuff world wars are made of.
And Dmitry Medvedev basically said that the well-known thesis of Western countries, Russia cannot be allowed to win the war. What does it really mean? Follow the simple form of logic. If it is not Russia that wins, then apparently Ukraine. Ukraine's goal in the war is called the Kiev regime, the return of all the territories previously belonging to it. That is, their rejection from Russia. This is a threat to the existence of our state and the collapse of today's Russia. And this means a direct reason for the application of paragraph 19 of the fundamentals of the state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence.
Oh my Lord. Doc.
And then who is planning a nuclear conflict? Let me know. What is this if not a direct provocation of a world war with the use of nuclear weapons? Let's call a spade a spade. Western countries are pushing the world towards global war, and only a complete and final Russian victory is a guarantee against world conflict.
Whoa. Wow. Medvedev just said Russia at this point has no other option other than total victory in Ukraine, because if we don't have that victory, we're going to have a nuclear war.
Yes. In other words, Russia has to be declared the victor in the Ukraine conflict, one way or the other, either by force or by capitulation by the West. Mm-hmm. Those are the only two options that are mm-hmm. there. Because the way they've set things up is that for a victory for Ukraine means that the Russian provinces have to be integrated back in, and that Ukraine remains as a single state. For Russia, it means that the Russian provinces remain Russian, and basically they don't care what happens to the rest of Ukraine. However, NATO wants to slice and dice it up like we already know that they plan to, giving portion of it to Poland, maybe some more here, some more there. Everybody's going to get a piece of Ukraine before it's all said and done. If that's where the Russian victory lands.
Yeah. You know, going back to the previous story, how will Russia respond to the attack now that they have the proof that Great Britain did it? Personally, if I lived in Great Britain or France, you couldn't pay me enough money to drive through the channel. No way. The tunnel going through the English Channel.
Right.
You want to do some serious damage to Great Britain and France? Blow up the channel. What would King Charles say about the channel being blown up?
That would be an act of war, wouldn't it?
Oh, well, then Russia's going to come back and say, well, then if it's an act of war, then you blew up our pipeline. So let's call a spade, as Mr. Medvedev said. There's a possibility, Doc, that Russia takes out something very serious. Another one is the pipeline from Norway to Britain, because Britain needs that pipeline. They could take that pipeline out also.
Now, mind you, Russia has not blown up any pipelines of the West. No. Not a single one. But according to the West, Russia blew up its own pipeline, right, which is a crazy talk. But to this point, Russia has not attacked any infrastructure of the West as far as pipelines are concerned.
I'll show you what they did do. This is another Telegraph story, number 52. Russia deploys hypersonic missiles to Belarus in a message to the West.
So Russia has deployed air-launched hypersonic missiles to a base in Belarus for the first time, the Ministry of Defense has claimed. In its daily update on the Ukraine war Tuesday, the Ministry of Defense shared a satellite image which it said showed 2 Russian warplanes along with a well-protected container believed to be storing missiles. The image, which was taken back on October 18th, shows what the Ministry of Defense analysts believe are MiG-31K jets, as well as a possible canister containing Kinzhal hypersonic missiles at Mochulitsky airfield just outside of Minsk. Now, the Kinzhal missile is among the most feared weapons in Russia's arsenal, capable of reaching speeds of up to Mach 10. The weapon is intended to be much harder to intercept than conventional ballistic missiles. It can carry a 500-kilogram explosive payload or a tactical nuclear warhead.
The next story, Doc, this one caught me by surprise today. It's in the Wall Street Journal. Saudi Arabia and the United States on high alert after warning of an imminent Iranian attack.
Yes.
The first thing that came to my mind was, how do we get Saudi Arabia
back in the fold,
back into the club? We tell them the Iranians are going to attack them, and then we send a missile over to Riyadh that has Iranian markings on it.
Yes.
I say, you better get close to the United States. You better stop bad-mouthing us. We promised that we would take care of you, protect you, and those Iranians, they're shooting missiles over here. That was the first thought.
You wouldn't want anything bad to happen to you, would you?
No, you wouldn't. So that was the first thought. It's like, where did this story come from?
So Saudi Arabia shared intelligence with the U.S. warning of an imminent attack from Iran on targets in the kingdom, putting the American military and others in the Middle East on an elevated alert level, Saudi and U.S. officials said. In response to the warning, Saudi Arabia, the U.S., and several other neighboring states have raised the level of alert for their military forces. They didn't provide more details on the Saudi intelligence. The White House National Security Council said it was concerned about the warnings and ready to respond if Iran carried out an attack. We are concerned about the threat picture, and we remain in constant contact through military and intelligence channels with the Saudis, said a national security spokesperson. We will not hesitate to act in the defense of our interests and partners in the region. Now, last month, the commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps publicly warned Saudi Arabia to rein in coverage of the protest in Iran by Farsi-language satellite news channels, including Iran International, a Saudi-backed satellite TV channel based in London, popular with many Iranians. This is our last warning because you are interfering in our internal affairs through these media, Major General Hossein Salami said in remarks reported in state media at military drills in Iran's East Azerbaijan province. You are involved in this matter and know that you are vulnerable. So, Rick, that was my first impression, too, when I saw this article pop up. All right, so how do we get back into the Saudis' good graces here? Mm-hmm. Well, one way to do it is to keep those bombs from dropping on Riyadh. Mm-hmm. And so do you think this is where we're landing with this?
Talking about people that blow up pipelines, that Doc, there's no morality in these governments. Once you get at the national level of government, there's no morality. There's no fear of God. Murder is just doing business.
You're right.
Lying, cheating, stealing, murdering.
That's what we do, yes.
Assassinations. If some innocent people get killed, so that's just doing business, you know? But these intelligence agencies and military organizations run the world, and they're carrying out, they're carrying out the instructions of the people that run the world. Let's put it like that. They are the enforcers. They're the thugs that get this stuff done.
I mean, I'm surprised we have not seen this earlier at this point regarding Saudi Arabia. You know, of course, all the recent things happening with the relationship on the oil reduction and everything, and then Saudi Arabia talking to the Chinese about, different currency baskets, and then about Saudi Arabia joining BRICS.
Mm-hmm. Hey, remember what happened to Gaddafi?
The only thing we have on Saudi Arabia is our promise to protect them.
Yes.
And we've got a few jets over there, too. So,
Doc, while I'm talking here for a few minutes or so, check in to Israel. The Israeli elections, their fifth election in a couple years, is taking place today. And just before we came out here about an hour and a half ago, Benjamin Netanyahu was back in the lead. It looks like he's going to possibly be returning as the prime minister of Israel. The guy's got 9 lives. Also, I want to watch closely. There are some very radical Zionists running alongside Mr. Netanyahu. And these are hardcore, radical, racist bigots that want to round up the Palestinian people and deport them, do something with them, get them out of Israel, or get them out of Palestine, I should say. And so we'll see if they also win. And if they do, will they get any cabinet seats in the new Israeli government? Where's it standing right now?
Newsmax is reporting that Netanyahu is returning as Israel's prime minister. That's not official yet.
Go to.
Got Times of Israel. Exit polls show win for Netanyahu and far right, but long vote count ahead.
Okay.
And so
he's leading.
Right.
Bolsonaro lost in Brazil over the weekend. So Bolsonaro's out as the president of Brazil. Mr. Lula is returning.
Right.
And amazing story with Mr. Lula. I mean, he actually went to prison.
Ran again.
Ran again and won. So the Democrats might want to think twice about that with Donald Trump because, there's a lot of speculation that the Department of Justice is going to arrest Donald Trump within 1 or 2 weeks after the midterm elections in November. We'll see how that works out, if they dare put handcuffs on him. Do you know what the optics look like?
Oh, man, people would go nuts.
Donald Trump is not going to voluntarily turn himself in. He's going to make them come to Mar-a-Lago, handcuff him and take him out. There will be pictures that will go around the world, and it will infuriate people. So the Biden administration's got to think long and hard. Are they really going to arrest a former president of the United States who might be running against Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or any other Democrat that they put up in 24?
Rick, even if they did arrest him and put him in prison, he could still run for president.
He would, and he'd be like Silvio Berlusconi in Italy. He'll win. You know, every time they arrested Berlusconi, he won. So the same thing will happen with Donald Trump. Real quickly before we wrap it up, I'm just going to go through the headlines to show you that wars and rumors of wars. Yonhap News, the United States does not and will not recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, says the U.S. State Department.
This is in spite of the fact that they have nuclear weapons.
I don't know how. I don't understand that. They have nukes, but we're not going to say they have nukes. But if they use their nukes, we'll wipe them out.
But we're not going to recognize them as a nuclear state.
Will we recognize Israel as a nuclear state? We don't. We don't even admit that they have nukes.
Right. Even though the UN General Assembly, I think late last week, or maybe it was on Monday, said, Israel, you should get rid of your nukes. So,
next story, Yonhap News, North Korea warns of more powerful actions against allies' air drills. There's some big U.S., South Korean military drills going on this week. And then number 64, this is RT. North Korea claims U.S. nuclear war plans are in their final stage.
and basically saying these the escalation in these war drills in that area of the world is really just the planning for a direct nuclear attack on North Korea. And so they're not wrong. That's why we're there. And so,
but do they know something?
Right.
Do they know that a big nuclear war is coming? And are they prepared for it? Is that where we're at? Let's pray that it doesn't happen.
Amen.
All right, Father, dear Father, we love you and we pray in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Father, you see all this madness that's taking place, and you know of the evil works in the hearts and minds of men and women in power in this world. Father, I ask that you hinder their plans for war, whatever country that they're in. Hinder all of their plans for war. And Father, do not allow Satan to bring about mass destruction. Father, give your church more time to fulfill the Great Commission, to preach the gospel in every part of the world, and to make disciples of all men and women and children, and to baptize them in the name of Jesus, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father, give us more time to gather in the souls and prepare the people of this world for the great and terrible day of the Lord when Jesus Christ shall return and put an end to all of mankind's madness and gather his church together, that we may live with you forever in your kingdom in New Jerusalem. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. We love you very much. God willing, Doc and I will be back here. We appreciate your prayers and your financial support for this ministry. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.
God bless you.